We leave tomorrow, I said, the words tasting like treason before they left my mouth. You sold it? She said, voice thinner than I expected. You sold my house? It's not like that, I said. I signed the papers. It's done. You signed it, she repeated slowly, as if testing the shape of the betrayal. By yourself. I had to, I said. We're drowning, Mom. My job. There's nothing left. The mortgage, the hospital bills, the credit cards. I couldn't watch us sink. You couldn't ask me? She whispered, but it wasn't anger yet. It was a small, stunned sort of sorrow that made my chest tighten. It wasn't about asking. I felt my hands go numb. Daniel said the buyer would pay cash. He said we could clear everything, start over somewhere small, rent a new life. At least we'd be safe. You and Daniel decided? Her fingers brushed an old photograph on the table, the frame wobbling like a boat in a storm. My husband's picture. He would have said yes, I said too quickly. He'd want us to be okay. You taught me that. We did, she said, staring at the picture like it might answer her. We did teach you to fight, not to sell memories. He's not a memory, I snapped, and the words cut me. He's gone. The house is only wood and nails now. You think he'd agree? She asked. You think he would have wanted this? I don't know, I said. But I know we can't keep paying for a house that's empty most of the year. It's practical. I stopped because the word sounded like a justification I couldn't afford. She stood up slowly, as though retrieving courage from an old coat. Do you remember the first summer we came here? She asked. The fishing at dawn, the boardwalk lights, the way he fixed the porch swing without saying a word? I remember, I said. I could see him then, sun-freckled and patient, the way he taught me to tie my shoes and then my first knot for the boat. Those memories were sharp and clean, and suddenly they felt like a wet sheet wrapped around my chest. He swore on that porch, she said, voice small but steady, that this house would stay in our family. Not for money, for promise. It was a promise, I said. I know, I read the letters. I read them when I thought no one was looking. You read them? The surprise turned into something like pain. Why didn't you tell me? Because it wouldn't have changed anything, I said. We still needed the money, Daniel said. He said. She let the words hang between us, and they felt heavy enough to break something. He said if we didn't sell, we'd lose everything, I said. We'd lose our house in the city, we'd lose stability, and what then? Where would we go? You sold a promise for stability? She asked. Is that what we are now? Paper and receipts? It was never meant to be this, I said, because I didn't know how to say what it had actually become. Fear that gnawed at my ribs at night, the way the bills seemed to whisper my failures when I tried to sleep. She walked to the window and pressed her palm to the glass, looking at the faint curve of shoreline far beyond our town. The light fell across her face, and for a moment I saw every year stacked on top of each other, every birthday, every scrape, the silence after the funeral where we learned to speak without saying the words. I could have worked more, I said. You could have asked me, she repeated. You could have sat with me on the porch and counted the cost together. I thought I was protecting you, I said. I thought I was doing the right thing. You thought you were right. She turned so slowly that I didn't know whether to call it grief or resignation. Is Daniel here now? Is he the one who convinced you it was the only way? He said it was time, I said. He said we had to act fast. He said. The repetition did something quiet and terrible. Did he give you a reason he wanted it gone so quickly? He said the buyer was impatient. Cash offer. If we hesitated, they might walk. It's market value, Mom. It's a memory, she said, like a verdict. It's a memory my husband wanted kept. You took that from me. I didn't take anything, I said, wishing the words were true. I didn't mean to hurt you. You hurt me, she said simply. Deeply. There was a silence that felt like a held breath. I went to the box of photographs, fingers trembling, and picked up a faded postcard of the house with its blue shutters. My thumb passed over my father's handwriting. I'm sorry, I said, but the apology sounded small in the room. Sorry? Her laugh was a sound I hadn't heard from her in years, cracked and honest. You think sorry will re-stitch the floors and the porch and his promise? No. I pressed the photograph to my chest, like I could hold back the tide with paper. I know it won't. I panicked. The job disappeared. The savings disappeared. Daniel said this was the shortest, cleanest fix. Short, she echoed. Clean. She walked over and placed a hand over mine on the photograph. Her fingers were colder than I remembered. When the sun comes up tomorrow, the keys will change hands. I began, and my voice thinned. I'll ask them for time. For what? To unsell it? She shook her head slowly. You don't understand what that house means. Her whisper landed in the air like a sentence that refused to be smoothed over. My mouth opened, closed. The room blurred at the edges. I wanted to say that I did understand, that I knew every creak and every story, that I had slept in the attic when storms came and had listened to my father breathe into the dark. But the truth was sharper than any memory. I had made a choice I couldn't easily take back, and with it, I had stepped into a place where guilt lived and secrets waited. The photograph in my hand trembled, and under the wavering light I could see my own face reflected in the glass. Younger, resolute, and suddenly terrified of the person I had become. I was packing the last of the boxes when a drawer slid open on its own. It made a low creak, the kind that carries memory in it. Inside was a single yellowed envelope, tucked under an old pen and a set of rusted keys. My father's handwriting, neat, deliberate, stretched across the front. To my dearest Helen, my breath caught. Mom? I called out. What's this doing here? She didn't answer right away. She was in the living room, sitting near the window where the light hit her silver hair. Her eyes were far away. Mom, did you know Dad left a letter? She turned, slow and careful. A letter? It's addressed to you. I held it up. I found it in his desk. Put it back, Emma. What? Don't you want to read it? Her voice sharpened. I said, put it back. Something in the way she said it made me pause. It wasn't anger. It was fear. Small, buried fear. I sat beside her, the envelope shaking in my hand. Is it about the house? Emma, please, she whispered, closing her eyes. Not now. I tore the envelope open before I could talk myself out of it. Her shoulders tensed, but she didn't stop me. The paper inside was brittle, like it could crumble if I breathed too hard. It began simply, My Helen, and then drifted into something I didn't expect. He wrote about how the beach house wasn't just theirs, how he and Mom had made a promise years ago, a promise to keep this land as it is for the people who come after. He called it a living memory. What does that mean? I asked quietly. A living memory? Mom's eyes glistened. It means it was never just a house. But you never told me that. Some things, she said softly, are kept quiet for a reason. I looked down at the letter, the words trembling in my hands. You should have told me before I sold it. Her head snapped up. What? I sold it, Mom. We're leaving tomorrow. For a second, I thought she hadn't heard me. Then her lips parted and her voice cracked. You, what? I told you, I said quickly. Daniel and I, we needed the money. You didn't tell me you sold it. I did, I insisted. I told you we had to let it go. Letting go isn't the same as selling it, she said, her voice trembling. Good God, Emma, what have you done? I stood there frozen, trying to find words, but none came. I thought she'd understood before. I thought she'd accepted it. It was for us, I whispered. To survive. To start over. Her eyes looked hollow. Your father would never forgive this. That stung more than I wanted it to. I wanted to shout back, to remind her how hard it's been, the bills, the job loss, the pressure. But before I could, my phone started ringing. Luke, I muttered, seeing my brother's name flash. Perfect timing, I answered. Hey, you sold the beach house? He said, his tone sharp as broken glass. How do you even know that? Mom called me crying, Emma. What the hell were you thinking? Don't start. You didn't even ask her. Or me. The house isn't yours to sell. I froze. What are you talking about? It's in her name. Dad transferred it to her after he got sick. You had no right. That can't be true, I said, though my stomach was already twisting. It is, and you just signed it away. I didn't know. My voice cracked. Daniel said. He told me it was fine, that the documents were checked. Daniel, Luke said, his voice dripping with disgust. You let him handle it? You've always trusted him too much. Stop it, I snapped. You don't know what we've been through. I know you just broke Mom, he said coldly. And when you realize what you've done, don't expect me to fix it for you. He hung up. The silence afterward was unbearable. I could still hear the faint sound of my mother crying softly in the next room. I sat on the floor beside the open drawer, the letter still in my lap. The ink had faded, but one line stood out. If this home ever leaves our hands, we lose a part of ourselves. A cold feeling crept up my spine. I kept reading, hoping for something, anything that would make sense of this. But all I found was that one promise, to keep the land untouched, to protect it. When I told Daniel that night, he didn't seem shaken at all. "Your brother's overreacting," he said, sitting on the edge of the bed. "Paperwork can be fixed. If the house is in her name, we'll get her to sign later. Don't worry about it." "Don't worry?" I said, incredulous. "I might have committed fraud, Daniel." "You didn't commit anything," he said. "It's all family. We'll sort it out. She doesn't want to sign anything. And she's barely speaking to me." He sighed, rubbing his temples. "She's old, Em. She'll calm down. Just give it time." "She's not old," I snapped. "She's grieving. You don't understand what this place meant to her." "It's a house," he said flatly. "You need to stop romanticizing it." Something in me recoiled. "You sound like it never mattered." "It doesn't matter," he said, standing. "What matters is that we're finally getting a clean slate. No more debt, no more struggle. You should be thanking me, not panicking over some dusty letter." He left the room before I could answer. The quiet that followed was suffocating. I sat there staring at the envelope again. The words blurred through the tears I refused to admit were there. I wanted to believe Daniel. I wanted to believe it was all fixable. A small mistake in paperwork, a misunderstanding. But deep down something felt wrong. Later that night I lay awake, unable to sleep. The wind outside brushed against the window, soft and hollow, like the sea whispering from miles away. I closed my eyes and suddenly I wasn't in bed anymore. I was standing on the beach, the sky bruised with storm clouds. The waves crashed hard against the shore, spraying salt across my face. Then I heard it, faint, distant yet unmistakable. "You sold more than walls, Emma." I spun around. The voice was my father's, clear, calm, just as I remembered it. "Dad?" I called out. But there was no one there, only the wind howling through the empty house behind me. I woke with a gasp, heart pounding so hard it hurt. My skin was cold, damp with sweat. The room was dark, still. But the letter sat on the nightstand, the paper slightly curled as if someone had just unfolded it. And in that moment, I couldn't tell if what I'd heard was a dream or a warning. "I need to sign the final paperwork," I said, sliding into the chair like I belonged there. "We already have signatures on file," she replied, not looking up from the screen. "Everything's processed." "Who signed?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "Your mother's name is on the deed," she said, fingers hovering over the keyboard. But the buyer insisted on a notarized release from the owner. "So who signed the release?" I leaned forward. My heart was loud in my throat. "There's a signature here," she said slowly, turning the printed page to me. "Looks like Helen Harris, but the notary stamp is missing." "That's weird." I touched the ink as if it might dissolve. "Mom didn't—" "She told us she mailed the form last week," Carla said. "We received something that looked like her signature. I can't finalize without the notarized ID." My brain snapped cold. "You mean someone else sent it?" "It's on the file," she said. "I didn't want to alarm you, but this signature is different from the one on the property records. It's got a different slant." She watched my face. "Did someone help you with this?" "No," I said, the word too small. "No one helped me." "You sure?" she asked. "These transactions can get messy." "He did it," I said before I could stop myself. "Daniel signed for her." There was a long blink. "That's a serious claim." "He had to," I said. "I thought it was quicker. He told me it would save us. If he forged it, that's fraud," she said quietly. "You need to be careful. I can hold the closing, but whether it can be reversed depends on when he did it and whether the buyer knew." "Hold the closing," I said too fast. "Please don't close anything." "I can delay paperwork for a few days," she said. "But buyers get impatient." "I know." I folded my hands until they hurt. "Just tell me everything you have." She handed me a photocopy. The signature was a mirror of my mother's in a way that made my stomach drop. Familiar but wrong. I signed another form to pause the process and left the office with the paper like a hot coal. Outside, the sky was low and flat. My fingers shook as I called him. The phone hit my ear before he answered. "Hey, everything okay?" he said, casual like breakfast plans. "Where are you?" I asked. Running an errand. Why? At the real estate office. I felt my voice betray me. They said the owner's signature was required. Oh, he sounded annoyed. They were going to call you. They said you signed for Mom. A silence that could have been a storm. Look, I did what needed to be done. You forged her signature, I said. The words tasted like metal. It was a formality, Em. She knew we were selling. He sighed. You're panicking over paperwork. The buyer offered cash, right? We needed this. She didn't sign. You can't just... I handled it, he said flatly. You've been so stressed. I fixed it. Stop acting like you don't trust me. I trusted you, I said. And you... I couldn't finish. My world had a new jagged edge. You're overreacting. He softened, as if that could erase the line he'd crossed. We'll sort anything that comes up. It's done. It isn't done for me. The words came out raw. I'm going to see Mom. Don't, let her rest. She's fragile, Em. His voice had that chill of control again. We can talk tonight. I hung up without a goodbye and drove before I could rethink it. The house felt smaller on the inside than the memory made it. The front door creaked the same way it always had, like an old man clearing his throat. Margaret was there, a shawl around her shoulders, hands folded like a prayer. You look like you've seen a ghost, she said, standing when she saw me. You know, I said, holding the paper. Is she okay? Has she been at the house? She sat carefully. She's been going there every day for the past week. Says she needed to be near him. I found a letter from Dad, I said. A promise. I thought she would understand. She always understood. Margaret's voice broke on the last word. But she's been quiet since you told her. She can't be quiet. I sold it. The words felt foreign in my mouth. What do you mean, sold it? Margaret's eyes narrowed. You did what? I signed the papers, I said, the confession slick and terrible. Daniel said it was the only way. Margaret's face went hard. You didn't have the right to do that. I thought I did. I sat on the edge of the sofa. I thought it was the only way to keep us afloat. She's the legal owner, Margaret said. Richard transferred the deed to her years ago. Everyone knew. You had no right. I didn't know that, I whispered. I swear. Margaret's hand found mine. Her skin was warm, steady. You should have asked me. You should have asked Luke. The house isn't just a thing, love. It's the promise he left. I thought he'd want us to be okay, I said. I thought saving our life meant making hard choices. And you made one without her consent. Margaret's words were gentle and merciless. She didn't sign. She would never sign. I didn't know. The sentence felt thin and useless. You need to tell her, she said. She's been going there to speak to his photograph. She tells him things she won't say out loud. I wanted to tell her myself, I said. But she won't listen. She won't. You can't fix trust with explanations, Margaret said. Not always. I left her house with more questions than answers. The drive to the beach felt like traveling toward an accusation. The shoreline looked small from the road, a sliver of bright between two dark banks of land. The house stood where it always had, blue shutters fading at the edges, porch paint chipped from years of salt. The door was locked, but the curtains moved as if someone had just passed behind them. I pressed the forged papers to my chest, the ink warm from my hands. He had done it. He had signed for my mother, played with the shape of her name like it was clay. The idea made my stomach flip sick. I stepped onto the porch. The wood sighed beneath my weight. I could smell the ocean tang and old coffee and the faint cologne of a man who'd smoked on summer evenings. I shouldn't have been holding the papers. I shouldn't have let him make choices for me. My hands trembled as I pulled them out again, staring at the familiar loop of her name. Crooked, hurried, wrong. I don't know when I became someone who could be betrayed by the person I'd chosen to trust. Standing there, the wind lifting the hem of my dress, I realized the ground had already shifted. I had no idea how deep the cracks went. I folded the pages and let them fall into my lap, a small, obscene confession. I was still clutching the forged papers when the knock came. 3 short taps, polite, deliberate. Not Daniel's knock, not my mother's. When I opened the door, a man stood there holding a leather folder and wearing an expression that didn't quite match his kind eyes. Emma Harris? Yes, I said slowly. I'm Ethan Cole. He extended his hand. I believe we have some business regarding the beach house. Something about the way he said the beach house made my pulse stutter. You're the buyer? Technically, he said, smiling faintly. Though after what I've learned, that may not be so simple. I hesitated. What do you mean? May I come in? His tone was polite, but it carried an authority that made it hard to refuse. The living room still smelled faintly of sea salt and dust from the packed boxes. I gestured for him to sit. I'm guessing you didn't drive all this way just to meet me in person. He set the leather folder on the coffee table. You're right. I came because I found something that concerns us both. Concerns us? He opened the folder and slid a worn photograph toward me. That's your father, Richard Harris, he said. My breath caught. My father was smiling in the picture, his hand clasped firmly with another man's. They stood on the same patch of land where the beach house now stood. And that's my father, Ethan said softly. I looked closer. Your father? He nodded. This was taken in 1983, the day your dad bought the property. I frowned. So what's the problem? He exhaled through his nose, calm but focused. They made an agreement. A promise, my father used to call it. When he sold that land, your father agreed to preserve the coast. No commercial development, no demolition. It was written into the sale documents. That was over 30 years ago, I said. We're not developing anything. It's just a house. He tilted his head. The buyer I represent isn't just buying a house. He plans to rebuild the whole stretch of shoreline into a resort. I felt my stomach drop. No, that can't be. It's just a private sale. That's what I thought too, Ethan said quietly. But when my firm received the redevelopment plans, the coordinates matched your family's property exactly. I started digging. I folded my arms. And? The deed your husband submitted. It's missing an appendix, he said. The one your father signed with mine. That appendix limits any transfer of the land without both families' consent. I blinked, trying to keep up. You're saying the sale might be invalid? He nodded once. That's exactly what I'm saying. For a moment, the room seemed to tilt. The sound of the ocean outside was distant, almost unreal. Why would my father make that kind of promise? I murmured. Because he believed in keeping it untouched, Ethan said. My father used to say Richard Harris was the only man who treated this land like it had a soul. His words hit me harder than I expected. My father, who built that porch with his bare hands, who told me as a child that the ocean never belonged to anyone, had made a promise I'd just broken. I rubbed my temples. Daniel didn't mention any of this. He handled everything. Ethan watched me carefully. Daniel's your husband, right? Yes. Then maybe you should ask him how this appendix disappeared. I laughed, but it came out hollow. You think he erased it on purpose? I don't know him, Ethan said simply. But people don't forget legal restrictions that obvious. I wanted to argue, but deep down, I already knew Daniel was capable of cutting corners. He called it problem solving. I called it shortcuts. Why are you telling me this? I asked. If your family had a claim, you could have gone straight to court. Because I don't want this to become a war, he said. My father respected yours. I think he'd want me to try honesty first. There was something disarming about the way he said it. Calm, direct, without malice. He slid the photograph closer to me. Look at them. They trusted each other. I stared at the photo again. 2 men, 2 smiles, 1 handshake that bound decades of trust. The air in the room thickened. I didn't know, I whispered. If I had, I would have stopped it. I believe you, he said softly. Before I could speak again, the front door opened. Daniel stepped in, his expression tightening when he saw Ethan. Who's this? This is Ethan Cole, I said quickly. He's the buyer. Daniel's jaw tightened. You could have called my office instead of ambushing my wife. Ethan stood calm as ever. I'm not here to ambush anyone. I came to clarify the situation before lawyers start calling. There's no situation, Daniel said coldly. Everything's signed. The sale's legitimate. It's not, Ethan said, his voice like steel under silk. Your contract's missing a preservation clause. Without it, the transfer's void. Daniel smirked. That clause was outdated decades ago. It doesn't hold. Maybe not morally, but legally? Ethan countered. It does. Daniel stepped forward. I don't know what game you're playing, but this deal isn't falling apart because you're nostalgic. Ethan's gaze didn't waver. I'm not playing a game. I'm honoring a promise. Something shifted in the air, quiet, dangerous. Daniel's smile faltered for the first time. Emma, he said sharply, we're done here. I shook my head. Daniel, he showed me proof. Our fathers. Don't start with that sentimental crap, he snapped. The man's fishing for leverage. Leverage? Ethan echoed. You think I want money from her? Daniel didn't respond, just glared. Ethan looked back at me, his tone gentler now. Emma, you have every right to know what you sold. I'll send you the documents. Read them yourself before he does anything else. Daniel's voice cut through the room. We're leaving. Ethan turned to go, pausing at the doorway. Be careful who you trust, he said quietly. There's more to this than you think. The door clicked shut behind him. I stood frozen, the photograph still trembling in my hand. Daniel exhaled sharply. He's bluffing, trying to scare you. Don't let him get in your head. He had proof, I said. Dad's signature, his father's. They made a deal. It doesn't matter, he said. The sale's done. We're not undoing it because some stranger wants to play historian. Daniel, if what he's saying is true, it's not, he barked, the calm mask cracking. Just drop it. He stormed out of the room, leaving the air thick with something I didn't want to name. I stared down at the photograph one more time. My father's face smiled back, unaware that one day his promise would be broken by his own daughter. The tide outside was rising. I could hear it against the rocks. And for the first time, I felt like it wasn't just the sea coming for me. It was the truth. The attic smelled like dust and old rain. The boxes looked like graves I'd been avoiding. Found something? I called, pulling the last lid back. It's in here, I said, voice small. Dad's journal. You sure you want that? She asked, but she wasn't there. Just my own memory of her saying yes 100 times. I flipped the cover open. The handwriting was his, uneven, honest. The first line hit like a fist. We made a promise, not a profit. Promise? I murmured, reading faster, heart knocking. He writes as if he's confessing, I told the room out loud, like someone might answer back. I read the pages aloud to myself because saying it made it true. He wrote about an agreement with Ethan Cole's father. He called it protection, a covenant to keep the coastline natural. He said the house was built as a symbol, not an asset. He wouldn't. I stopped because he would. He'd leaned on that porch and sworn quietly to my mother. I'd heard pieces, but never the whole sentence. I found the passage where he named the terms, the appendix, the signatures. He'd described tears and handshakes and a refusal to let the land be sold for a resort. He'd written, "This is not for us alone. Do not sell without consent." I read those letters when I was a child and thought it was romantic nonsense, I said, more to myself than anyone. He meant it. My hands were shaking when I called Daniel. You need to come home. What's wrong? His voice was calm, too calm. It's Dad's journal, I said. He promised the land. There's a legal appendix, something about preservation. I think the sale might violate that promise. There was a long exhale. You found his diary? Yes. You're not serious. He sounded annoyed, like I'd interrupted a plan. I'm serious. This is bigger than nostalgia. It's legal. Ethan said there was an appendix. So now you believe the buyer? He barked a laugh that made my skin pull tight. You believe a stranger over me? I believe the document, I said. And I believe what my father wrote. We have to cancel the sale. We have to tell the agent. You're panicking, he said. Calm down. This is bureaucracy. We can fight it if we need to. But we sold it, Emma. You can't just... I started. I can. He cut me off. I handled it because you were paralyzed. You thank me later. Handled it? I repeated, tasting the word. You forged my mother's name. You lied to everyone. You think I forged it for fun? He snapped. I did it because we're drowning. You don't get it. I get that we're behind on bills. I get that we've been scraping. My voice rose despite myself. But Dad made a promise, Daniel. Mom lived by it. You erased that for a check. They were promises between dead men, he said. Promises don't put food on the table. You always make it sound so clean when you rationalize. I sank onto the trunk, journal in my lap. Why didn't you tell me? Why make the choice without me? I did tell you. He leaned against the doorway, hands in his pockets. I told you we needed to sell. I told you the buyer would clear everything. You said it was the only way. I heard how small I sounded. It was. He pushed off the doorframe and walked closer. You want to cancel now? Fine. Go tell Carla to stop the closing. Good luck unpicking signatures and trust. I'll call her. I reached for my phone, then froze. Daniel, why did you rush it? Why not wait a week? Why not ask Luke? His jaw tightened. We didn't have a week. Offers drop. People back out. You know that. No, I don't. I looked up at him. Because you never told me the full reason. Well, here it is then. He folded his arms. The land is worth 3 times what you think. I found out the development plans. I figured we could get out clean, start over. Pay off your mother's debts, our debts, everything. You lied about values? My voice went hollow. You didn't tell me it was that valuable? I didn't lie. I chose a plan that worked fast. He shrugged, as if choosing a scam were a household chore. You're so emotional about a house. It's not yours to cry over. It was my father's. The journal felt like paper and rock in my hands. It was his promise. Promises don't inherit mortgages. He closed his eyes for a second, then opened them, and there was no softness there. If you're going to hold on to ghosts, we're not going anywhere. I'm not holding on to ghosts. Heat crawled up my throat. I'm trying to respect a man whose word mattered. Are you telling me you think your money matters more than that? I think our future matters more. He stepped forward. You made a bad decision leaving everything to sentiment. I fixed it. We move now. You fixed it by stealing her signature, I said slowly, each word measured. That isn't fixing. That's theft. He laughed, sharp and quick. Is that what you call it? Theft? Grow up. You don't get to tell me how to feel about my father. My voice trembled with more than anger. There was grief under it, too. He looked at me like I'd become a stranger. You and your nostalgia. It's time to act like an adult. I am an adult. The sentence sounded older than me. I'm asking for honesty. You want honesty? He snapped his fingers. Here it is. I saw a way out. I took it. I don't need your permission to save us. You didn't save us, I said. You gambled with Mom's name and with my trust. And if it makes you feel better, then yes, call off the sale. His voice cooled. Put it in legal hands. Make it messy. I don't care. But don't expect me to cry over some dilapidated coastal property while we're buried in bills. I stood so fast my chair scraped. You don't care? You said that? After everything, I said what I had to, he said. Stop trying to moralize this. We're pragmatic people. You're pragmatic, I echoed, feeling a fracture under my feet. You call that pragmatic? I pressed the journal to my chest. You traded a promise for profit, for numbers. It's not profit. It's security. He took a slow breath. We're done with empty promises, Emma. If you want to fight the buyer, fine. Spend our time on that. But don't drag me through guilt. You sold something sacred, I said, each word a quiet accusation. And when I asked you to stop, you made me complicit. He looked at me then, eyes sudden and cold. You were complicit the moment you let me do it. I didn't know. The room narrowed. You knew enough to trust me, he said. That's complicity. And you... I swallowed. You hid how valuable the land is. You used my fear. He stepped closer. If we don't move, we're going to keep losing. What was I supposed to do? Let us disappear while your nostalgia kept us frozen? You haven't heard anything. My hands were fists until they hurt. You don't understand the promise. You didn't see him build that porch. You didn't stand with her at midnight and listen to him talk about preservation and children who might need the shore. He paused, blinked, and for a second I thought maybe something in him would crack. It didn't. Save the poetry, Em. I can't live on ideals. I can't live with this betrayal. I looked at him plainly, the words soft but lethal. I don't even know who you are. He smiled, but it was hollow. You will. You'll see me through this. No, I said, and it wasn't the same tentative woman who'd picked up the journal. I don't think I will. The house felt empty when I walked in, like someone had taken the warmth out with them. You weren't answering, Carla said the moment I reached the office. Her face had that careful look realtors wear when a sale turns sideways. He's gone, I blurted. Daniel, he's not home. What do you mean gone? She asked, closing a file. He left 2 days ago. My voice sounded small to my own ears. I can't reach him. She folded her hands. Emma, sit down. There's something you need to know about the payment. What about it? I sat without thinking. The room tilted a little. It cleared and then it didn't, she said. It was transferred to a holding account, then moved again. We've been trying to get the funds released, but... She stopped, watching me. Moved where? My throat tightened. The words felt brittle. Offshore. She didn't sugarcoat it. And a lawyer, Rita Vance, handled the transfer. She's been in touch with the buyer's rep. I slammed my palm on the desk. Rita Vance? That's his lawyer. He authorized the withdrawal, Carla said. I have emails. He signed the release. He signed? I stared at her. Daniel signed for everything? My chest felt like it had been hollowed. He co-signed certain documents. Look, I can put a freeze request, but if the money's already wired out, it's complicated. She reached across and pushed a photocopy toward me. The bank stamps were precise, clinical, proof of movement. My hands shook as I read the numbers. I knew decimals and commas could change lives. I just never expected them to steal mine. I need Luke, I said. Call Luke. You want me to call him? Carla asked. Yes, call him now. The call came faster than comfort. Emma, what's wrong? Luke's voice was all edges. It's Daniel, I said. He disappeared. He wired the money offshore. Rita Vance handled it. What? He was silent for a beat, then anger sharpened his tone. He did what? He took the payment, I said. Carla says it was moved. I thought the sale would clear everything. Now it's gone. I'm on my way. His voice became a promise. Don't do anything. Don't talk to him. When he arrived, he didn't knock. He pushed through the door like a man carrying thunder. You sold it? He snapped, looking at the documents on Carla's desk. You signed away the house without talking to me? We went through this, I said. Luke, I didn't know about the appendix. Daniel? He forged her name, Luke cut in, voice low and furious. I heard, from Margaret. He forged Mom's signature. He did, I said, and then he withdrew the funds. Luke's face paled and then went hard. He took the money and left? He disappeared overnight, I said. No note, no call. Rita Vance's name is on the transfer. Luke slammed his fist against the table. That lawyer has teeth. This is organized. It was supposed to be a fresh start, I said. He told me it would fix everything. And it did, for him, Luke said. He pocketed it and ran. I can't believe I was so blind, I whispered. How did I not see it? How did I sign off on this? You were told to trust him, Luke said. You weren't thinking about offshore accounts and shell companies. You just wanted a way out. My phone rang. I didn't want to answer it, but I did. It was Margaret, her voice shaking. Helen collapsed, she said. She heard about the transfer and she fell. I called an ambulance. My legs went strange. Where is she? I asked. At St. Mary's. They've taken her in. I thought you should be there. I grabbed my keys without thinking. In the car, my hands were white around the wheel. Luke drove. He didn't say much. Rage has a way of making people practical. You did the right thing telling me, he said once we were moving. We'll get this back. We? I repeated, and the word felt both foreign and necessary. Yeah, we, he said. We'll call a lawyer, freeze assets. I'll talk to Rita if I have to. You're not alone in this. At the hospital, the fluorescent lights buzzed like a distant election. My mother lay on a narrow bed, her face smaller than I remembered, the tubes making the rhythm of some other life. She heard her name tied to a wire transfer, Margaret whispered. She wouldn't stop saying, they sold what he promised me. Then she just couldn't breathe. I moved to the bedside and took her hand. It was thin, a paper map of veins and memory. Mom, I said, voice raw. I'm here. Her eyes opened slowly. They were cloudy but focused when they found me. Emma, she whispered. Why? I didn't know about the appendix, I said. I thought selling would keep us safe. I thought... Promises, she said, as if reciting a prayer. Richard promised. He made me promise to keep it. Her fingers tightened around mine for a second. You sold it, didn't you? I did, I said. The confession was a stone thrown into a quiet pond. I'm sorry. I tried to stop it. You tried? She chuckled once, all humor gone. Who signed my name? Daniel did, I said. Saying his name felt like opening a wound. Her face collapsed into an expression that blurred grief and fear. He took our name and signed it away. I'll fix this, I whispered, each syllable a vow. I'll make it right. How? Her voice was small. How will you fix the ocean? I'll fight, I said, surprising myself with the certainty. I'll find the appendix. I'll take him to court if I have to. I'll find where the money went. You can't bring back promises with lawsuits, she said, breath shallow. No, I admitted. But I can stop him from erasing it. I can stop him from letting developers turn the shore into something neither of them wanted. Luke leaned close. We'll hire a forensic accountant. We'll trace the transfers. Offshore doesn't mean untouchable. And if Rita Vance answers to a corporate hand? I asked. Then we expose them, he said. We take it public if we have to. We make noise. Margaret reached up and smoothed my mother's hair. You're brave, she said. You always were. I'm scared, I said. But I can't watch this quietly anymore. Good, Luke said, because quiet allowed him to vanish. In the corridor, a nurse came out and told us to keep it down. The world felt fragile here, like a glass ornament that might shatter with the wrong touch. I pressed my forehead to my mother's hand. Images of my father's handwriting, of that journal, of the porch where he'd promised. Those faces pushed forward in my mind. He took everything, I said, not sure if I was speaking to the room or to myself. But he won't take my father's promise. I didn't expect to see Ethan again so soon. But when he walked through the door of the cafe, I knew by the look on his face that he wasn't there for small talk. You found something, didn't you? I asked. He nodded, pulling out a folder. My sister and I went through my father's old estate records. Turns out, our family still has partial rights to that land. The sale can't legally go through without our consent. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. You're saying, Daniel's deal isn't valid? Not entirely, he said, but it's enough to fight him. Behind him, a woman with a gentle but steady expression stepped forward. I'm Sophie, she said. Ethan's sister. I'm a paralegal, and we're working with our family's attorney, Mr. Patel. He's waiting outside if you want to meet him. I looked between them, unsure whether to feel grateful or terrified. Why are you helping me? Because my father trusted yours, Ethan said. And because you deserve a chance to set this right. For the first time in weeks, I felt something shift inside me. Not quite relief, but the faintest flicker of hope. We met Mr. Patel in the parking lot. He was composed, deliberate, the kind of man who seemed to see 3 moves ahead in every conversation. I've reviewed the documents, he said, adjusting his glasses. There's clear evidence of fraud in the transaction. The forged signature alone is enough to file a civil claim. Can we really win? I asked. That depends on how much you're willing to fight, he said. It'll take testimony, proof of ownership, and someone willing to stand up against Daniel and his counsel. Rita Vance, I said quietly. She's ruthless. She's smart, Mr. Patel replied. But even smart people lose when the truth is on the other side. Ethan glanced at me. We're not letting this end with your family's promise being destroyed. His conviction caught me off guard. I'd spent so long drowning in guilt that hearing someone believe in me felt foreign. Carla met us at Mr. Patel's office later that afternoon. She looked nervous but resolute. I'll testify, she said before anyone asked. I saw the documents. The notary stamp was missing, and Daniel pressured me to process it anyway. I kept copies of the originals. That's exactly what we need, Mr. Patel said. With your statement, we can petition to freeze the property transfer until the court hearing. Carla exhaled shakily. He's not going to like this. He doesn't have to, I said. He just has to face it. Ethan smiled faintly at me, and it wasn't the smile of a man amused. It was one of quiet respect. That's the first time I've heard you sound like yourself. I blinked, unsure how to respond. Maybe I'm finally remembering who that is. Later that evening, we drove down to the beach house. The sky was pale gold, the ocean calm enough to trick me into believing everything was still the same. I wanted to see it one last time before court, I said as we stepped onto the porch. I don't know why. Maybe to remember what we're fighting for. Sophie trailed behind us, taking photographs of the property for documentation. This place feels alive, she said softly, like it's waiting. Inside, the air smelled faintly of salt and old wood. Dust floated through the late light. I walked through the hallway, touching the frames that hadn't yet been packed away. My parents' laughter still seemed to echo in the walls. Ethan stopped at a corner of the living room, where a small wooden box sat half-hidden beneath a broken lamp. What's this? I knelt beside it. It was carved with small seashells, my father's handiwork. I hadn't seen it in years. He made this for my mom, I said. She used to keep love notes inside. The latch creaked as I opened it. Inside was a folded piece of paper, yellowed with time, bound with a faded blue ribbon. My hands trembled as I untied it. The handwriting was my father's. If this house stands when I am gone, let it stand for what it was built to protect. No sale shall alter its purpose. The land, the sea, and the promise belong together. I stared at the words until they blurred. It's his will, I whispered. Not the legal one, but the real one. Sophie leaned closer. This could support your case. It shows intent. If we can authenticate the handwriting, it'll strengthen everything. Ethan smiled, though there was a softness in his eyes. He left you exactly what you needed. I felt tears sting my eyes. All this time I thought I'd broken something sacred. Maybe he knew I'd find this when I needed it most. You didn't break it, Ethan said quietly. You're the one putting it back together. For a moment I didn't know what to say. His words reached somewhere I hadn't let anyone near. Outside, the light was fading into that gray-blue twilight that makes the ocean look endless. We stood on the porch, watching the waves slide toward the shore. Tomorrow, Mr. Patel said from behind us, I'll file the injunction. Daniel won't be able to touch the property until the court hearing. I nodded, still holding the paper. He won't see this coming. Are you ready for that fight? He asked. I looked out at the horizon. The air was cool, salt brushing against my face. I am now. Sophie smiled. You sound like your father. Ethan glanced at me, and for a brief second, there was something in his eyes I couldn't quite name. Not pity, not admiration. Something quieter, trust. I never thought I'd say this, I said, folding the letter carefully. But maybe all of this happened for a reason. Ethan tilted his head. You mean the sale? The betrayal? The reminder, I said, that some things can still be fixed, even when it feels impossible. He nodded slowly. Then let's fix it. As we locked up the house, I took one last look through the window. The moonlight spilled across the living room floor, catching on the wooden box, on the words that had brought my father's voice back to life. Maybe I hadn't lost everything after all. Maybe I'd just been forced to find what truly mattered. The tide whispered against the shore like a promise waiting to be kept. Maybe I can still fix this, I whispered. The courtroom smelled like paper and polished wood, the way old houses smell like dust and memory. I sat with my hands folded so tight they ached, and the light through the tall windows made the dust motes look almost sacred. You understand the consequences of perjury, ma'am? The judge said, looking at the witness stand. Yes, Your Honor, Carla said. Her voice was steady, but there was a tremor under it I could feel from my seat. You saw the original documents? The opposing counsel pressed. I did. She lifted a copy and tapped the notary box. There was no stamp on the release. The signature didn't match the deed on file. I kept the originals because I suspected irregularities. You kept them? The counsel sneered. Why weren't these submitted earlier? I flagged it, she answered calmly. I was advised to proceed to avoid losing the buyer. I regret that decision. That admission landed like a chisel. I had imagined Carla as neutral, a cog in a machine. Hearing her own voice say she'd been pressured made it human, made it real. We have evidence of a notarized deed in Helen Harris's name dated 15 years prior, Mr. Patel said from our table. We also present a private testament indicating the intent to preserve the land in perpetuity. You expect me to rule on intent? The opposing counsel shot back. Intent does not create title. It creates context, Ethan said, standing beside Mr. Patel, voice low but firm. My father and Richard Harris put their agreement in writing. It's here. He passed the seashell box letter to the clerk. A hush moved across the room like a tide pulling back. You produced a personal will? The judge asked, taking the letter with gloved hands. Is there authentication? We've submitted handwriting analysis, Mr. Patel replied. And a witness who observed the will being written and placed in the box. Call your witness, the judge said. Sophie Cole, Mr. Patel said. I was there when Mr. Harris wrote it, Sophie told the court, voice bright with certainty. I visited the house once when I was young. I remember him tying that ribbon. He spoke about promises and children who shouldn't lose the shore. Can you swear to the handwriting? The counsel asked. It's his writing, she said simply. The counsel's cross-examination tried to tear the edges off the story, but Sophie held. Her testimony felt clean and honest, like someone describing a sunrise. You didn't coerce Ms. Jennings? The counsel tried next. No, Carla answered. I was asked to expedite. I complied. I shouldn't have. I wanted to stand and hug her, to tell her she'd saved more than a file. Instead, my throat did a strange, tight thing, and I swallowed it down. Ms. Harris, you may approach, the judge said, and I walked up the aisle like someone stepping into a confession booth. You sold this property? The counsel began, eyes hard. I signed papers, I said. I thought it would save us. I thought it was the only way. You knew your mother's name was on the deed? I didn't. I thought... The truth came out in a rush. I trusted Daniel. I saw a signature and believed it was hers. I was wrong. Did you intend to defraud anyone? No. The single word felt heavy and clean. And Mr. Harris? He asked, meaning Daniel. He signed for her. He told me it was necessary. He said I didn't have to worry. The memory of his calm, the way he'd explained everything like it was a spreadsheet, rose inside me. I didn't know he'd moved the money offshore. The counsel leaned back, the edges of his mouth thin. We'll show the court that Ms. Harris benefited from the transaction. You're withholding the truth, Luke said from the gallery before I could stop him. You say that like it clears him. Order! The judge barked, and all at once the tension tightened. Let him speak, Mr. Patel said quietly. Luke stood at the edge of his seat. I'm here to tell you he coerced my sister, he forged a signature, and he wired funds to accounts meant to prevent recovery. He lied to her face. You swear that? The judge asked. I swear it. The defense called witnesses. Rita Vance, via deposition read into the record, their corporate banker who danced around questions, an investor who claimed ignorance. Daniel sent an affidavit insisting the sale was legal and that all signatures were in order. He's lying, I said to myself over and over until Mr. Patel tapped the table and reminded me to breathe. Then came the moment that felt like a rope being thrown into a churning sea. Carla took the stand again under direct questioning and laid out every email, every hesitation, every request that had come from Daniel's office. She handed the court the copies she'd kept, the originals we'd thought lost to expediency. You realize the implications of this? The counsel said, voice cold. I do, she answered. I wish I'd spoken sooner. You produced bank records? Mr. Patel asked. Yes. The clerk fed a stack of printouts forward. Numbers, routing codes, a path that led from our account to an offshore entity. Rita Vance's signature stamped the wire. The courtroom read them like a map of betrayal. This wire transfer, Mr. Patel said, was made without Ms. Harris's explicit consent and to entities designed to obscure ownership. We moved that the transfer be considered part of a fraudulent scheme. The judge folded his hands and stared down at the paper. Ms. Harris, your counsel alleges fraud and forgery. Yes, I said, my voice thin and steady. He forged my mother's signature and stole the payment. And your husband? The judge asked softly. He's not my husband in the way I thought, I said. The words were small and private, but I wanted them in public. He lied to me. You have evidence of the transfer? The judge asked. We do, Mr. Patel said, and the bank records were placed before him. The judge read, the room silent but for the movement of pages. He looked up, and for the first time all trial long his eyes settled on me in a way that felt less judicial and more human. The court will consider the handwriting analysis, the testimony, and the bank records, he said. Forgery is a serious accusation. We understand, Mr. Patel replied. Hours felt like minutes and minutes like years. The defense pressed, tried to paint motives, suggested the letter was sentimental and unenforceable, argued that paperwork had been sloppy but not criminal. Still, the combined weight of Carla's honesty, Sophie's memory, the journal, and the paper trail shifted the balance. We'll recess for the jury to deliberate, the judge finally announced. I sat in a kind of stunned relief, the world muted. My mother's face was pale in her wheelchair, Margaret squeezing her hand. Ethan leaned close and whispered, You did what you could. What if they decide against us? I whispered back. Then we fight, Luke said, jaw hard. We don't stop. The jury filed in, and every person in that room seemed to hold their breath. When the foreperson stood, my stomach dropped into a place that felt like the sea. We find in favor of the plaintiff, the foreperson said. No one made a sound for a beat. Then the judge spoke, his voice steady and final. Based on the evidence of forgery, the intent established by the testamentary letter, and the fraudulent diversion of funds, this court finds the transfer invalid. He looked at me with a softness that made my eyes sting. The property returns to the Harris family. Tears came then, not the triumphant kind, but the hollow, cleansing kind. I covered my face with shaking hands and let them fall. My mother, weak and fragile, lifted her chin and met my eyes as if to say she always knew I would try. Relief landed like rain after a long drought. Justice had its own strange mercy. I finally understood the word redemption, not as absolution from others, but as a small, fierce right to look at myself in the mirror and know I'd tried to set things right. The first thing I noticed was how small the house looked after the storm of the last months. "We actually pulled it off," Luke said, wiping his hands on a rag as he stepped back to admire the new railing. "It looks like home again," I replied, surprised at how steady my voice sounded. "You did most of the plans," he teased, but his grin was warm. "I just lifted things that were too heavy." "You lifted the heavy stuff and the blame," I said, and he laughed. The porch smelled of fresh paint and sawdust. A stack of reclaimed floorboards leaned against the wall, waiting for our hands. "Mom's been asking about the garden," Luke said. "She wants flowers by the bench, doesn't she?" "She remembers every little thing," I said. "Even the stubborn spots my father refused to fix." "He'd be pleased," he said. "He'd be proud you didn't let them take it. He'd be angry at the way he'd have to teach me a dozen times how to plant tulips." I smiled, and it felt light to say his name without a stone behind it. Later, when we moved slowly through rooms, patching, sanding, painting, Ethan showed up with a toolbox and a backpack of takeout. "You make a mean paintbrush carrier," he said, as if this whole thing were casual. "You just volunteered to cook," I replied, closing a cabinet. "No, I volunteered to help. Big difference." He handed me a screwdriver and stood by the window, watching my mother in the yard. "She's out there," I said. "She walks like she's learning to trust her legs again." "I'm glad." He paused, then asked quietly, "How are you doing?" "Really? I'm better," I said. Still guilty, still tired, but better. Saying it out loud made the edges less sharp. "You don't have to carry everything," he said. "You know that, right?" "I do now." His presence felt steady, not intrusive. "Thank you for not leaving." "You don't get to exile me," he said with a small, ironic grin. "We have a shared grievance to fix." When Mom came out with a thermos and a careful smile, she watched us for a moment before she said, "You've both been working too hard." "We like hard," Ethan replied, smiling at her like he'd known her for years. "You've made this house less angry," she said to me, then looked at the work on her hands and back. "You've finally brought peace back to this house." The words landed like a benediction. I felt something in my chest loosen, a small knot I hadn't had the courage to untie until now. "Do you remember how he used to keep the bench polished?" she asked, eyes on the shoreline. "He would sit there with his coffee and plan nothing at all." "I do," I said. "I used to stand there and think I could fix everything from that spot." "You can't fix everything," she said gently, "but you can make choices that matter." "That sounds like Dad," I said. "Practical and stubborn about small rules." "He loved the small things," she replied. "It's why he made that promise in the first place." Later, as dusk softened to blue, I planted flowers near his bench, daisies and pale lavender, forgiving colors. Luke and Ethan handed me soil and watered their instructions into jokes. "Don't bury the seeds with your guilt," Luke said, and I actually laughed. "You don't get to be poetic and practical," Ethan muttered. "You two are impossible together," I said, but the warmth between them felt like a new kind of family. At night, when the house hummed with settling wood, I found myself walking the porch alone. The ocean was a dark smear with pinpoint lights from distant boats. I kept thinking redemption would feel like a bolt of light, I confessed to the night air, the words meant for the sea as much as for myself. "And?" Ethan's voice came from the doorway, quiet as if not to wake the world. "It feels like a slow, dull healing," I said. "Like putting bandages on things that were torn. It's not dramatic. It's steady." "That's better," he said. "Drama keeps you awake. Steady lets you sleep." I had trouble sleeping for a long time, I admitted. I'd stand here and replay every decision. The moment he signed that paper, the way I didn't stop him. "You did stop him later," Ethan interrupted. "You picked up the pieces. You're still picking them up." "It doesn't erase what I did," I said. "But it changes where I go from here." "You don't get to punish yourself forever," he said. "The people you've hurt will either punish you or forgive you. You can only try to do the latter." I thought about my mother, fragile and fierce in the hospital, and how she'd squeezed my hand and said, "Fix it." Not because she expected perfection, but because she believed in effort. I wanted to run away, I confessed. At first I thought if I disappeared, everything would be simpler. "And then?" he asked. And then I saw what running did to people. I looked toward the bench by the shore, where the flowers would soon bloom. I saw what staying and fixing does. You've stayed, Luke said, joining us on the porch. You fought. You didn't let him get away with it. He took from us, I said, voice small. But he didn't take the promise. Not while we remembered. That promise, Luke said, is what keeps this place more than wood and nails. We were quiet for a moment, listening to the ocean that had once sounded like accusation and now sounded like something softer, like a lullaby. You're forgiven by others, Ethan said gently. You'll have to forgive yourself. I don't know if I deserve it, I said. Do it for your dad, my mother said from the doorway, voice thin but steady. He wanted the shore kept. You kept that. Tears came then, not of guilt, but of a slow release. I let them track down my face and salt the air, and it felt like a washing. It's not over, I said after a breath. There will be more paperwork and people who want to test the trust. There'll always be reminders. We'll be here, Luke promised. We'll stand with you. And so will I, Ethan added. Not because you need saving, but because I believe in what you're doing. I looked at them both, family by blood and by choice, and felt something I hadn't allowed myself to feel fully in months. Hope. I still wake up some nights and hear my father's voice, I said, folding my hands in my lap. But it doesn't accuse anymore. It reminds me. Reminds you of what? Ethan asked. To keep what matters, I said. To make right when I can. To not let fear decide for me. The moonlight painted the bench silver. I stepped forward and placed my palm where my father once rested his coffee cup. I stand here now, I said, voice small and honest, and I try to be the person he trusted. You're doing it, my mother said, softer than wind over water. Sometimes redemption is found where guilt began. If this story touched your heart, please share your thoughts below. Tell me about a time you had to choose between what was practical and what was sacred. Or simply press subscribe to follow our journey as we rebuild. Forgive and fight for what truly matters. Your comment could help someone else find the courage to fix a mistake. And your voice might be the spark that leads another person toward their own redemption.